Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host Simon Conboy. Carrying on with the season preview series today, we'll be focusing on the Green Bay Packers. Now, for those of you who haven't seen one of these episodes before, I'll be breaking down my projected offensive and defensive starters. Of course, camps have started, we've got preseason coming up, but if the team were to line up tomorrow, this is how I suspect they will look. I'm not expecting it to be too much different on opening day in September. I will then be going through my projected record for next season before discussing what I consider to be the three key factors in whether this team will be successful. Likely return to the postseason or a disappointment where they miss out, which, let's face it, has not been common in the Aaron Rodgers era. So let's hop right in with the offensive starters. At quarterback, of course, the aforementioned Aaron Rodgers. For my money, the most talented quarterback in the league, outside of maybe Cam Newton, but I think Rodgers is just a better passer of the ball in just about every regard. Probably the most dangerous quarterback I've seen. Never seen anyone better than him outside the pocket. Tremendous deep ball thrower. Can run. Doesn't quite get enough credit for his effectiveness in that regard. Once again, he will give the Packers a chance in spite of a roster that does have some gaping flaws. And speaking of those, the running back depth chart. This team has thrown effectively mud at the wall and is going to see what sticks this season. I think Ty Montgomery I still expect to see starting. Got to say he did an admirable job, far better than I would have expected last season as a starting running back. Any of those rookies you'd figure could potentially get the number one job from him or make up a 1-2 punch. I really do think it's anybody's game. I've currently got Jamal Williams as the most likely of them, but I would not be surprised to see this running back group in any combination at the start of the season. A wide receiver, Aaron Rodgers' favourite target, Jordy Nelson, should be fully healthy for this season. And boys, let's say the connection they have makes him even more dangerous than he would be otherwise. And make no bones about it, he is a very good receiver. Doesn't ever get enough credit for being as good a deep threat as he is. One of the best route runners in the game, and on the scramble drills, he is incredibly dangerous. Randall Cobb and Devontae Adams round out the starting three for me. Both good players, not quite as consistent as Nelson, but Aaron Rodgers will find ways to make it work. I think both, have enough speed to get open over the top, but they're both also quick enough to play in a West Coast type game, which, the Packers, they're a bit more West Coast than I think some teams, than some people would think. It just so happens they throw the ball deep. They use the intermediate and deep game a bit more, but a lot of the same concepts, and I think Cobb and Adams are well suited to those roles. Both very good players after the catch as well, which is, of course, a big deal in that kind of scheme and system. At tight end, a big upgrade in Martellus Bennett. He should improve the blocking. He's been one of the best two-way tight ends in terms of blocking and receiving in the league for a while now. A definite upgrade over Richard Rodgers, who is, no slouch himself as a receiver. Might, for once, see the shock of all shocks and see this team lining up in two tight end formations. Bennett will certainly give this team a lot more juice, though. I think we're going to probably see a bit more of an effort to run the ball this year. How that goes, I'm not so sure. But, Bennett's an upgrade. This group looking a lot better. The offensive line, the tackle pairings, a very good pair. David Bakhtiari might be the best left tackle in the league that most people are not aware of. Got a big extension this offseason. He is a superb pass protector. I want to see, this team try and run the ball a bit more so I can get a bit more of an idea as to how effective he is in that regard. But no doubt a top-tier pass protector, and that's what you want in this offense. And Brian Bulaga, who's an above-average right tackle. By no means exceptional, but a very solid player. He can be relied on, and it gives this team a good pair of bookends to protect Aaron Rodgers with. At guards, we've seen some change. Lane Taylor and Jari Evans are my projected starters at the moment. Evans is still effective, all things considered. He's at advanced age, he's had some injuries over the course of his career. Certainly, not the same player he was when he was arguably the best guard in football with the Saints, but I think he can still offer enough, particularly in pass protection, to help this team out for a year. Lane Taylor, need to see a bit more from him before I'm willing to make a judgment. This, for me, is potentially an issue. However, they do have Corey Linsley at centre, who has played well for this team. I think he's an above average player. Once again, a good pass protector. Run blocking, we'll see how it goes. He has had some good help around him the last couple of years. So this year will be a big test, I think, with 2 new guards. And at kicker, Mason Crosby, who seems to have got over the yips he had a couple of years ago. This offence, I look at it on paper and I just think the weapons around Aaron Rodgers are very good. Obviously, he makes them better as one of the absolute top quarterbacks in all of football. And I look at the offensive line and the run game, and I think they don't scream top tier offense to me. And frankly, if it wasn't for Aaron Rodgers, I don't think this would be. But they are, however, going to score points. He is that good. It was much like when Peyton Manning was with the Colts. Team is just going to be productive. The offensive line will be all important, especially up the middle. You need to be able to keep Aaron Rodgers clean. He is elusive and can extend plays, but you don't want him getting hit too much. On this arm, the Packers ride, so they got to keep him clean. If they can do that, once again, expect it to be one of the more explosive offenses in the league. Aaron Rodgers will carry this team to being incredibly productive in the passing game. The run game is a giant question mark, both from the interior of the offensive line and the guys playing the running back position, and also just how much of a commitment they show. But if they can get that balance, I expect them to be great. If not, they're still going to be very good. The defensive group, much maligned over the last few years with Dom Capers. Defensive end, Mike Daniels, he's an absolute stud. Plays the run and pass very well. Great pass rusher for a 3-4 end. I'm a big fan of his. I think he's one of the top players at that position in the league. And Kenny Clark, who needs to show a bit more this year. If he can become a disruptive presence, I think that will help this team no end. It's a big year for him, I think. At nose tackle, not so sure. I'm thinking Christian Ringo of the guys, from what I've gathered, seems the most likely starter. I think this is a spot that's potentially wide open. They have drafted some guys. The outside backer position, Nick Perry, who had a very slow start to his career but has played very well in the last season and a half. And Clay Matthews, who has rather had the opposite, started off his career great and has really seemed to slow down the last couple of years. Perry, he got his big contract based on last season, which was probably worth it. I think he could be a bit more of an effort guy against the run, but as a pass rusher, he's developed well. Clay Matthews, I'll never question his effort, but I worry doesn't look as explosive an athlete as he was early in his career. I think he's had numerous injuries, and I think some of them may have started to catch up with him. Julius Peppers isn't there to support these guys anymore. He has been a very valid contributor over the last couple of years. I think how Clay Matthews can perform this year will be a big determining factor in how effective this group can be. He needs to offer some pass rush. Inside linebacker, this has been a problem spot for a while. Jake Ryan and Blake Martinez will be trying to fill that role. I do worry about, from a size perspective, they don't really have that thumper, guy that can take on lead blockers. They're both smaller, quicker guys without a true, known presence at nose tackle. That concerns me, but they can run better than some of the pairs they've trotted out in recent years, so they might do a better job in coverage. The cornerback group, still very young. Demarius Randall, who was much maligned in the playoffs last season. Rookie Kevin King, I'm convinced he's going to be good enough to start for this team week 1. And they've shown no fear putting young corners out the last couple of seasons, which has bitten them in some occasions. And I think Devon House, the most experienced of the group, ends up playing in the slot. I would worry about being too ambitious with the man coverage. I think both King in particular, but I think Randall as well. I think they've both got a lot of talent as man corners, but I just think it might be a risk, especially with what could be an iffy pass rush, to do that early in the season. Certainly be interested to see how Randall comes back after getting so much abuse in the playoffs, and how King does as a rookie. I feel like this group could go either way. Safety, good group there. Clinton Dix, one of the best young safeties in football, and Morgan Burnett is a steady presence at the strong safety spot, and at punter, Justin Vogel. This group has been much criticised, and it's been difficult because, frankly, Dom Capers has not had a huge amount of talent to work with. When I look through this starting 11, I see 2 players that I consider top talents in Clinton Dix and Daniels. Nick Perry's above average. And other than that, you've got some youngsters with some upside. Clay Matthews is he's a savvy vet, even if who could potentially play very well. Clark's got upside, the corner group does. But there's not a huge amount of experience or talent there, and there's not a lot of depth. So I really do worry about this group once again. Fortunately, the offense should bail them out. But I think I look at them and I worry about how they're going to handle the run, particularly with the team like the Bears, who've got a very good interior offensive line. The Vikings, I think, are going to make an effort to be a far more effective run team. Who knows how that goes with that offensive line. Even the Lions. So I think it could end up being a real weakness for this team. I like some of these defenders, and I don't just want to jump on the bandwagon piling on. And as I say, I think there's a real lack of talent in this group, and there has been. So it doesn't all just go on the defensive coordinator. But it's just hard to see this being a high-end group at the end of the day. However, in spite of that, last year this team finished 10-6, which was good enough to make the playoffs. This year I've got them going 10-6 also. I think they'll be a more consistent unit. I don't know if we'll see that sort of early season swoon from Aaron Rodgers that has everyone questioning him once again. But I do think they're going to drop some games, especially when they're playing some of the other more powerhouse teams in the league. I think they can certainly drop some games in the division, especially if those teams are able to get run games going. In terms of big stretches, let's see, what is the big stretch for this team? I mean, I know early on, of course, they got the Seahawks in week 1. That's going to be a big one. Certainly looking forward to that. That feels like a slightly less significant rivalry than it has in the last couple of years, and neither team feeling as potent in terms of being absolute threats in the NFC, although you can't rule either team out, but they've certainly both got their problems. Right, so yeah, that early schedule. I think there we go, we can say that's the big one. So 2 NFC powerhouses in weeks 1 and 2 with the Seahawks and Falcons. You never know, an 0-2 start could really hurt. I also think there's a stretch where they play the Cowboys. I think that's week 4 or 5. The Cowboys, followed by the Vikings, of course, a big divisional game. I expect the Vikings to be the biggest threat to them in the division. Then the Saints, who have similar problems to the Packers. That game could end up being 50-50 in terms of points. Then the Lions and then the Bears. That's a really big stretch of games. If they can do well out of that and not have issues with that starting stretch, I think this team could be okay. The end of the season isn't too bad for them. They get a couple of divisional games, the Browns and the Panthers. So I think even if they're maybe just behind somebody, they'll have room to put a bit of a run together and make a push for the playoffs. It is just a question to me of how much the defence holds back this offensive group. This is also a team that I just cannot see having success if there's any kind of rash of injuries. They're very thin. It's not the best Packers roster of the last few years, in my opinion. I think they might finally start to pay for losing those guards as well, in Josh Sitton and TJ Lang. And in terms of the three key areas, I did just hint at the first one of those, the guards. They've got to keep Aaron Rodgers clean. Interior pressure is a big deal when you've got a player who can easily escape an oncoming edge rusher. If it's up the interior, it does make things more difficult. and they also have to allow this team to try and establish a run game. I think Aaron Rodgers would be a lot more dangerous if teams have to respect that area of the field. The middle of the field has been, pretty much a coverage zone for teams in the last couple of seasons, with Eddie Lacy's problems and subsequently, heading to Seattle. If this team's got a run game, then this offense can be incredibly high-powered, and that's going to come from the interior of the line as much as anything. The other issue, the pass rush. I think Clay Matthews in particular, I don't want to really single out an individual guy, but he needs to try and roll back the years. Just Perry and Mike Daniels isn't going to be enough to get the kind of pressure that a team that, frankly, whilst Rodgers is there, has Super Bowl aspirations every year. They need to find more ways to generate pressure, particularly with some of the potential issues in the secondary and the potential for teams are going to be passing on these guys a lot, because, as I say, I expect this offense is going to put up points, so the pass defense is going to have to be on point, and that starts up front. And the corners, Demarius Randall has to continue his development. There were signs and things to like about his play last year, even with the whipping he got in the playoffs, but these things happen. Kevin King's a player I'm high on. I think he'll be relied on early. He may have similar sort of teething problems, particularly when you look at playing the Falcons in week 2, playing most of the teams in the NFC South. They're going to throw the ball a lot this year, so they're going to have to do a better job holding up against some of the top tier wideouts, particularly again once you get to the playoffs. The NFC has a ton of high powered offenses that could make it into the postseason. Even teams that you don't necessarily think look that high powered, like maybe the Giants, their receiving core is loaded. The Eagles, the Cowboys, the Saints, the Falcons, the Buccaneers, the corners are going to have to be able to do their part, and for that they're going to have to keep on developing and getting better as the season goes on, and possibly peak as this team looks to make a postseason run. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on the 2017 Packers. Let me know what you guys think. Do you agree, disagree? Any players you think we should be keeping an eye on in training camp and preseason that maybe haven't been given a shout out? Let us know. Always happy to talk ball, whether it's the comment section below, the Cover Zero Facebook page. Find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. As I say, always happy to talk ball. And if you've enjoyed this, if you could like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon, all that good stuff, it would be greatly appreciated. Covered half the league at this point, so the remaining half will be coming up over the next couple of weeks. I'll be doing some pre-season analysis soon. Hopefully on Friday we'll be delivering our first podcast of the season. That'll be me and a couple of my friends. So I hope you guys can tune in and enjoy those. Hoping the first one's on Friday. Not making any promises at this point. And as always, if you could like, share, subscribe, that'd be grand. Thank you so much for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure as always. Have a great evening and go Bucks.